Hello, friends and family, strangers and acquaintances, my future children, and my future self. So, I originally wanted to have this out just after Father's Day, but that didn't end up happening. But hey, it is what it is. Don't worry, be happy. That was a big catchphrase from my dad growing up, which I find is pretty fitting for him. It definitely sums him up well. He's kind of a happy-go-lucky person who just enjoys the simple things in life, which does sound nice at first, but as with everything, nuance exists. And I go into that with Lex as we hash out our respective daddy issues in this entry, respectfully. So, without further ado, let's go all in. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It is Father's Day.
Yes, it is.
So, Lex, I just have one question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why won't you call me Daddy?
Oh, God.
That's a story for another time. So,
Yeah.
let's talk about our daddy issues.
Where to start?
Should I start? Do you want to start? Should I start with me since...
Yeah, you start.
Okay. Yes, we are recording this on Father's Day, the very tail end of it.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's barely Father's Day at this point.
I don't even know what time it is right now.
It's not even Father's Day, actually, at this point.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's midnight.
Well, we're...
Exactly.
Exactly?
Yeah.
Well, we're recording this moments after Father's Day has passed.
Yes.
And my dad is kind of the polar opposite of my mom. I know I've sort of painted my mom in such a very flattering light, but my dad has always been sort of the counterweight to my mom, where my mom hasn't had like a lot of patience with me growing up. I always knew him to be the patient one, whereas like I never really had too much fun like around my mom. My dad was always like the fun parent. Those are some of his best qualities, being so like patient and fun and sort of happy-go-lucky, and definitely for the most part, he's a great dad for sure. He definitely fills the role of like car knowledgeable dad. Although I think your dad has my dad beat in that department.
Oh, yeah. Probably.
My dad just knows like kind of like just general, like more general things than I know.
Yeah.
Whereas
he knows
like,
more about like how they work and stuff.
Yeah, whereas like I know general maintenance.
Yeah.
Oil changes, tire rotations, things like that.
Yeah. Well, my dad, like, one of his hobbies is like cars. Like,
yeah.
That's basically like, like,
actually,
what he does.
Actually, my dad, I'm pretty sure he's told me when he was younger, like he wanted to be like a racer.
Well, that's crazy.
Like he liked like things like NASCAR, I think.
Oh my dad also liked NASCAR a lot.
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
I don't know if he ever did it growing up in the Philippines.
Can you imagine your dad drag racing?
I feel like I could.
Yeah.
I feel like I could. Yeah.
He's basically Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
In Fast and Furious.
I've never actually seen any Fast and Furious movies, but I
need to show you some clips.
Yeah. I mean, I get the gist.
It's Fast and it's Furious.
It's Fast and it's Furious. And how many movies are there?
God, I lost count. I know, like, I've seen up to like 4. So oof. I know that much exists, but I think there's more than that.
Why do I feel like there's like 10?
I feel like there might be. I feel like I just haven't seen them.
Yeah. Another great thing about my dad is he's pretty funny. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true.
A lot of times at his own expense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which
yes.
sort of leads me into, I guess, the constructive criticism part
Oh, yeah.
of Father Dearest. He is a simple man.
Mm-hmm.
He is a man of simple pleasures and nuance, and social intricacies may not be his thing.
Yeah. Not his strongest attribute.
No. And there's a lot of factors going to that. There's cultural factors. He grew up in the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
also during a different time,
Mm-hmm.
also without things like social media in today's world.
Mm-hmm.
My parents and I could not be more different in our generations,
Yeah.
both culturally and also the time that we grew up in.
Yeah. I do think that that is a harder bridge to gap than like my parents and me,
Right.
just because you do have like a cultural aspect like kind of working against you.
Yeah, yeah. So with that, English is not his first language,
Mm-hmm.
but that makes it seem like he's like not fluent in English. He is. He speaks English fine.
Yeah.
His phrasing is just rather simple at times.
Yeah, and you might not understand like higher levels of like English, like like in metaphors and like things
Right.
like that, like
Right.
or like sayings that like we grew up hearing. Maybe they probably
Yeah,
have
like
different
idioms
sayings
and
for
stuff.
yeah, like idioms,
Expressions.
yeah, things like that might go over their head.
Yeah. And things like slang as well, but I'm sure that's with every parent.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's definitely like a generational thing more so
Yeah,
than
yeah.
anything else. Slang goes over my head sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh gosh, we're getting
I
to
know.
that point.
That's when I
Where-
started feeling old.
Urban Dictionary is a site I go on daily to
Oh
be
my
like,
God.
what does this word mean? What is that?
Daily?
Okay, maybe not daily. That's I exaggerate, but
Yeah.
but yeah. And while that can be, I suppose, wholesomely innocent at times,
Mhm.
it can be frustrating in other times.
Oh yeah.
Like he's the kind of parent that likes to text me like every single day.
Mhm.
If he goes like a day or two without talking to me, it's a little concerning.
Yeah, you're like,
Because
what happened?
Yeah, he usually will text you like every hour.
Yeah. Just checking in, making sure
Well, right,
what
right,
you're doing.
right, and that sort of level of communication could just get quite redundant, and at times I feel like it's like meaningless, and it's just kind of like
Kind of surface level.
yeah, very surface level, and shows the lack of like deeper intelligence that I sort of wish was there with our relationship. Like I couldn't like explain half the things we talk about.
Yeah, like you're not having like lengthy discussions about like world topics and
Yeah, existential stuff.
yeah,
and-
yeah, like nothing existential, nothing.
This whole podcast would probably like mostly go over his head.
Yeah, nothing deeper than like how are you and what are you eating and
Right, and I just want to make it clear, I'm not, trying to insult his intelligence level and whatnot. But everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and deeper conversations and like thought-provoking topics may not be one of his strengths.
Do you think your dad wants to talk about those sorts of things, or do you think that like he's just cool with like the level that he's at? And
I think he's satisfied with the level he's at.
yeah,
I've never seen him want to talk about deeper things. Well, that's not true. Sometimes he'll like drunk text me saying things like, am I normal? and I've given him like my real like in-depth answers, and I have no idea if it like sticks
Or sinks in at all.
right, because he's just like thanks,
Things.
and I'm just like, did that all just go over your head?
Maybe he's processing.
Perhaps, yeah. I'm not gonna count that out. Perhaps he is processing.
Or maybe it did go over his head. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely possible.
I mean, that makes sense. It's not everybody wants to dig deeper.
Yeah, I guess it just frustrates me because like I am one of those people who's like very much like a thinker, a learner, and like
That's why we get along so well.
right. And so I want to be able to have these conversations with my dad, but I just realized that like, well, really both my parents, like they're just not at the same level of emotional intelligence that I'm at.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And
I'm not trying to say that to like brag about myself. I'm just saying that as a fact that like they will not understand half the things that like you and I think.
yeah, and a lot of that is partially because, you know, in conversations that I've had with both of your parents, that it's very much the whole saying of you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of thing. They think they're past the point of learning much of anything new.
Yeah, and that's something I know you and I both disagree with.
Yeah, for sure.
In the sense that like we hope to never get to that point where like we don't think we'll be open to learning new things or change, especially with the changing times. Like we've grown up in times that are just constantly changing. So
I think stagnation, particularly like mental stagnation, is like kind of like the death of like your soul, basically.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's just not you have to keep curious and like mentally stimulated and like and I just think it's silly to say that, oh, like despite the fact that I'm still alive and can learn things or like can think about things, that I'm just good. And I'm like, I'm never going to learn a damn thing in my life. Like another damn thing. Like, I think that's so silly. Like, what's the point? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't like that mentality.
Yeah. I think I'd like to think that, I'm humble enough to know that like I will never like know everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. Of course not. There's no way.
So
there's so many infinite perspectives.
I'm hoping to be always open to different things and new ways of thinking.
I think that's the key.
Right.
Yeah. Always keep an open mind, even if you may not understand something.
Right.
You general.
And some views and perspectives I may be inclined to, I guess, reject quicker, only because I see that it's coming from a place of like hate.
Yeah.
Or
like, and I don't think I think hate
bigotry
is the key word. Yeah, bigotry. Like, because ignorance isn't inherently a bad thing.
No.
Like, being ignorant doesn't mean like you're a bad person or you're incorrect about something necessarily, like you yourself as a person is incorrect. It's more just like you just don't know, you're unknowledgeable.
Right. I think I fear ignorance, which is why
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I try to like almost like fact check myself to make sure my line of thinking is I'm on, the right side.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to do because, there's being alive, there's biases all around you, obviously.
Right.
Or even bias to the point of, where you grew up or how you grew up or who you grew up with and things like that. Perfect, being on the topic of like dads and parents and stuff in general.
Yeah. But yeah, with my dad, I feel like it's not so much that he's sort of set in his ways. Mm-hmm. It's more like he's just content in his ways.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for that as well. the problem is it just for you, and it's frustrating, or it can be frustrating.
Yeah. There are many, many, many times where, we're texting and I'm just like, this conversation is so just basic.
Yeah, it's repetitive.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Just ask me how my day is, what I had for lunch.
Like there's only so many times you can say the same thing.
And I get frustrated because I'm just like, can't you see that this is like unsubstantial?
Yeah. And on one hand, it's very sweet that your dad is, checking in on you and making sure you're okay and you have food and whatever. I think that's really, on one hand, it's very nice. But on the other hand, it's like you want a little bit more substance.
Right.
So, like the conversation.
Right. And another thing I want to hit on is I felt like my parents weren't super, super strict.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom was on the stricter side for sure. My dad, not so much. He was, the fun, lenient one.
Yeah.
But still, he had his moments too where like they sort of aligned, and I guess I sort of have a bad response to anything that I can interpret as them like trying to control me.
Yeah, you definitely you don't have control issues, but you have issues with like other people trying to control you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, especially, my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring that up because every now and then, like, my dad will ask me a very, like, seemingly innocent question of, like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And every time I see that, I have this response where my first, like, instinct is just be like, I am not telling you what I'm doing because you don't need to know.
Yeah, you feel like it's prying, basically.
I guess so. Yeah, it's like
invasive.
They still want to control me by knowing where I am and what I'm doing.
Yeah, and to them, more or less, it's probably like, just wanting to keep in touch, know what's going on in your life. But to you, it feels like an attack.
Yeah, because I always felt like they had to know where I was going. They had to know who I was with. And they had to know what time I was coming home. And like I just wanted to get away from all of that. That's what I look forward to the most as an adult.
Being your own person and setting your own rules,
right,
basically.
Because, yeah, exactly. Because like I felt like I was so limited.
Yeah.
So once I got away from that,
there wasn't a whole lot of freedom.
Right. And so once I got away from that, like, was when I really started to feel like I was living. But like every time these messages would come in, like it would feel like they're still grasping to try to like control me. And I know it's a me problem. Like that's
I think that's hard to unlearn.
Yeah,
That's gonna take like probably a very long time.
Yeah.
Because that's just sort of your like innate response, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I feel like that. Like especially since it's like your go-to. It's not like it's just, it like riles you up, kind of thing. Like it's a slow burn sort of situation. It's like automatically you're annoyed.
Right.
I've definitely seen that happen.
Right. And then if I am able to get past that sort of line of thinking, now like my emotions do like a 180, and now I feel super guilty for thinking that way because I then like empathy kicks in.
It's like a tug of war.
Right. And so I then see like their side, like my dad's side, and how I'm just like, oh man, like he just, his kids are out of the house now.
Probably kind of lonely.
Yeah, he lives with my mom, and my mom is she's a treat, all right.
We haven't gotten to that episode yet.
That'll be the day. But yeah, then after that, I just start to, I guess for lack of a better word, pity my dad. That like Also, it's important to mention he comes from a very large family. He has like, I think, a family of 7, 8, or 9, like, brothers and sisters. I can't remember, and a lot of them have already passed. And so, I've never asked him how that makes him feel, but I can imagine not great coming from a large family, and also a culture where it was very communal.
Mm-hmm. You're very close knit.
Right, very familial.
Mm-hmm.
To, the United States of America, very much an individualistic culture.
Yeah.
And, quite often, like, the norm in the nuclear family is to go to college or go to work, move out, and then I just feel like that's not what he knows.
Yeah.
Because I even see it with my cousins. My cousins on my mom's side, like, they're still always together, even though my oldest cousin she's older than me, and she's married, has 2 kids, but they're still always together.
Yeah, that's just a total discussion about cultural difference right there.
Right.
Like,
right.
things are just different. The value system's different. How people raise their children here are different. It's not the same thing. I feel like that probably is hard for your dad. Like, he's just used to something else entirely, and you two being raised here makes it like all the much more confusing for him.
Yeah. There's many factors going into it as to why there may be some disconnects in our relationship.
And it's very layered.
Right. But yeah, despite all that, I know my dad's a good guy. He's got a good heart, and I love him. But I do want to get to the stuff with your dad.
Okay.
But let's start with what we did today.
Yeah.
What did we do today?
We went to my grandfather's grave, my dad's dad, who I never met. He died like a year before I was born. Yeah. I never met him, never saw the grave. Looked it up online and found it. And yeah, I wanted...
We found the cemetery. Well, you found the cemetery.
Yeah.
Then we had to like...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had to find it ourselves.
I found the grave online, like the picture of it. And then we found the cemetery, and then, yeah, we had to look around and find...
It was a little bit of a scavenger's hunt.
Yeah, it was a bit of a scavenger hunt, but luckily the picture was, like, shaded. Like, there was shade on the grave, so I kind of was like, oh, yeah, it must be under a tree. So we just looked under every damn tree.
Yeah, until we found the right tree.
Yeah, well, eventually we found it.
Eventually.
Yeah. Took a while, but we got there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I asked my dad like a little while ago if he wanted to go, or like if we could go, or really that I wanted to go. And then he was just kind of like, oh no, I don't want to go. And I was like, all right. Kind of thing. So that's basically it. My dad didn't have a very good relationship with his dad. I don't really know a whole lot about him, like my grandfather, like as a person, other than the bad stuff that my grandma had said, or like the general story that I've gotten like secondhand, like from my mom. Yeah. So it was nice to go and see, like, he's buried in like a nice cemetery. It's like well taken care of, and
Yeah.
and it's just kind of interesting. He's buried with a family that I've never heard of. I have no idea who they are.
They're unrelated to you?
They might be. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the slightest idea. I think my dad vaguely said that he knows who they are, but he didn't get into like any specifics. So, like, my dad might have some idea who these people are that he's buried with, but it's like this family of people, and then like my like grandfather. So I don't know, just kind of begs some questions.
Yeah.
You know, like
yeah.
why didn't he get his own? Like, did he not have the money? Couldn't he not afford it? But maybe it was like his death was rather sudden, so maybe he just didn't plan for it. So maybe that was the whole deal. I don't know. But my relationship with my dad is not exactly the same as yours.
It's I would describe it as similar to my relationship with my mom.
Yeah, my dad is the more difficult parent of both of my parents.
Right.
Yeah, that's not to say I don't care about my dad or like I don't like love my dad. I just think that we have like such differences that it makes it hard to like have a relationship or at least a relationship for me that's meaningful.
Right.
I feel like what I want out of our relationship isn't really what my dad wants out of our relationship, or you know, especially being older now. And you know, I guess when I was younger it was much easier to have a relationship with my dad because it was, well, more so it was kind of just walking on eggshells, making sure you don't make him mad. It was more of like what that was.
Yeah, that's me with my mom, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and like there were some moments of connection there. Like I you know, like my dad and I would like talk about like music and whatever, and like he showed me a lot of like classic type stuff, like music wise, like Journey and like Meatloaf and like Billy Joel, like things like that. So like there was like that kind of thing we had in common, like a lot of like stuff like music.
Oh, speaking of music, I'm just going to interject for a second. My dad's the one who showed me Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Who is my biggest creative influence, hands down. For those who didn't know me in like high school and like middle school, I would definitely do all the talent shows, do the entire like get up with like the sequin jackets, the sequin gloves, the fedora hats.
Yeah, you were like the Michael Jackson kid.
Yeah, I was known as the Michael Jackson kid, and I very much I didn't believe I was him, but like when I stepped on the stage, like I very much became him. Like channeled the
embodiment of Michael Jackson.
Right. I channeled his spirit for sure, and I owe that to my dad. But okay, continue with your dad.
Yeah, like me and my dad like would kind of bond like over music, but beyond like that, like my dad's always been the person that was, you know, he's always like good for a joke and always like tries to like lighten the mood and always tries to bring some sort of, I guess, humor to the situation. And in some instances that's good, and then in other instances it's like you're making a joke when we're trying to have a serious conversation, and that's something that my family and I kind of disagree on. That my parents are very much like, oh, if you don't like laugh you're gonna cry kind of situation. And I'm more of like, oh, well, there's a time and a place for...
I was just going to say that, a time and a place.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to cry.
Yeah. You have to, like, let out those emotions.
You can't always be laughing.
Yeah, no. Not at all. And my dad was never particularly good at dealing with, I guess, the more, like, heavy emotions. He was never very good at dealing with, say, like when I would have like anxiety, or my mom was having anxiety, or even my brother. Like I feel like he was never good at dealing with that, or like if one of us was upset or crying, or like he's never good at dealing with that kind of stuff. And like I feel like that has definitely like hurt our relationship. That like my biggest problem with my dad is that I really just don't feel comfortable around him much at all. Like, I can't really talk to him the way I can talk to my mom. Like, I can go to my mom and I can talk to her and have, like, a relatively, like, civil conversation. Like, even if we, like, don't agree on most things, or not most things, but a lot of things, there are some things we don't agree on. Like, even then, we can have a civil conversation.
Right.
but my dad and I, it's never really been that way. If we've ever had a conversation about something serious, it's automatically we butt heads. And like, I have like, just really bad anxiety because of that, talking to him, that like my dad doesn't make me feel comfortable, like at all, really. Like he's never been an inviting person in my life to, like definitely not a shoulder to cry on. 100%. Like my family has always said that my dad goes from 0 to 100. And like when we say that, it's mostly that 1 second my dad can be like laughing with you, and the next second he's like really like annoyed or like upset with you. And like he's very like volatile that way. My dad was never one to like get physical, but he definitely would scream or like yell or like be like try to get in your face kind of thing, or like say something that was, try to get under your skin. Like my dad's like very good at that. And like, I guess that makes his brand of communication very effective up to a point, but not when it's like a family situation and you're trying to work out problems.
Yeah.
It mostly, whenever we've gotten into like a disagreement, it's never been resolved really, and it's never been productive for most of the time. Like it's been productive in the way for me to be like, oh well, I'm just not going to put myself in that situation again. I'm not going to do that. And going to therapy and talking to my therapist, that's exactly what she had said, that like don't put yourself into a situation that will ultimately lead you to a bad place, like mentally, or like if you really want to pursue a relationship, like if I wanted to pursue a relationship still with my dad, that if things come to pass and like things are getting kind of heated, then I should just walk out. But problem with that is it's hard to just do that sometimes. Hard to just walk away from a situation.
Especially back when you were, living at home.
Oh yeah, that never happened really. Like I would just sit there and like either let my dad just think whatever the fuck he thought, and then I would just be really fucking pissed about it, like internally, or I would say what I wanted to say, but then my dad would like, turn it around or twist my words or like, whatever, make me feel like bad about either the way I thought or what I said, and ultimately that kind of led me to, like, especially now as an adult, like not really trust him very much in terms of like asking for help or like talking to him at all. Like the channel of communication, like with my dad, like is not open whatsoever. Like I can't really text him or like talk to him really without it being a problem. I'm sure maybe my dad doesn't feel that way. I'm sure my dad probably is like, whatever. Like he maybe doesn't feel like it's awkward. And I could be wrong, but like, it's not like he's ever told me that, oh, like I feel the same way. Like we never had a heart to heart like that. That's never happened ever in my 28 years of life. Like,
yeah, something about, traditionally masculine men have such a hard time facing their emotions.
Yeah.
And even someone like me who I feel very much, open about my emotions, especially with you.
Yeah.
There are things that I also have trouble, facing and like sort of communicating and expressing in a way that is effective, productive, and healthy. So it's just a male thing.
I mean, I think that's a person thing. I think like everyone has like hang-ups and stuff that they find difficult dealing with. And that's not to say like, with my dad, I feel like, my dad has baggage and stuff, and that's not like, I don't look at my dad and I'm not totally unsympathetic or like totally unempathetic to my dad's situation. Like I can't 100% understand because my dad simply has never really told me. like the full story. So how could I?
Yeah, you've just gotten like bits and pieces from your mom, right?
Yeah, and things that I've inferred, like from my, my grandmother or whatever. Like, I feel like I can't possibly have the full story because no one's ever sat me down and been like, hey, this is the story, or at the very least, like, this is how I view the story. Like, it's never been a thing. I think it would be so much more meaningful if my dad was the one, like, to tell me these things. But really, it's always been my mom. And it's just secondhand information. It's not like that I don't believe anything my mom is saying, because obviously I do. But problem with that is it's like she's not necessarily the one that should be telling me these things. It's like my dad that should be telling me these things. And like my mom can be there to confirm or, give her side of the story or her view on things. But, my dad has never told me much of anything about himself. And I think that not only leads to me feeling like I don't really know my dad really at all, but also that I can't like trust him with much of anything. I don't feel like my dad knows me really at all. And I guess like what he does know about me, he doesn't like very much, especially now. I feel that way. And that sucks. Like, I don't like that.
Something that made me think about in terms of hearing stories about your dad almost solely from your mom. It's actually, I guess, kind of funny because in my relationship with my parents, I've had that too, but like it's it's all bad stuff about my dad. My mom loves to bust his balls.
Yeah, that's true.
In front of me,
In front of everybody, really.
Yeah, she'll tell me stories of how like he would skip school and like how like the college degree he had is fake and
yeah,
and
it's fake.
Jeez. Yeah, like
that's kind of funny.
Like
actually.
she jumps at the opportunity to like
make him look a certain way.
Yeah. Like poke fun at his expense.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of goes along with it.
Yeah. With like my dad, it's always, I feel like it's always hard.
Yeah.
It's always a difficult, kind of like with your mom. It's always like you guys have gotten to a place now where we're pretty civil and solid, yeah. and my dad and I haven't really, like, we were at that point at one point, but like the problem is that I just got tired of walking on eggshells. Like I was just like, well, I don't want to not say things anymore, or at the very least, I want them to understand that this is my point of view or my perspective.
Yeah, you want to be heard.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't mind if we disagree. Like, I don't mind the disagreement. I'm not trying to shove like my viewpoints or anything down anybody's throat, but I just want them to understand that even if we disagree, that hey, like, we can still have a relationship. But at this point, it's hard because I don't know. My family like isn't great when it comes to dealing with problems, like especially as like an older person now. I've come to realize that like a lot of our family is like held together by toxic positivity. And
I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you didn't, I was going to. Do you want to explain what that is for people who don't know or are not familiar with that term?
It's basically just that saying that positivity can cure all, and that avoiding the negative and blasting it out with like positive thoughts. And that in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when you're avoiding potentially unpleasant emotions or serious conversations in favor of being super uber positive, it comes off as rather dismissive. And
Yes. And according to that definition, I would consider my past self at times toxically positive. I thought positive thinking was the key to everything. And I do still believe in a healthy amount of positive thinking, but I also I understand there is a point where it does become toxic, like in the sense that it becomes dismissive,
Yeah.
like you said.
That's very much how my dad views things. Like, he thinks that, oh, if you just think positively, you can overcome all. And I think that that may have worked for him, but I don't really think that that works for everybody. I don't think it's fair to assume that everyone can do that.
I also think there's a little tiny bit of male privilege that
Yeah.
is a factor in that.
Yeah. Which I'm sure my dad doesn't think that exists, but
Yeah, well, male privilege exists, white privilege exists.
yeah. I think that, yeah, my family is largely held together by like toxic positivity and like kind of sweeping our problems under the rug, but also sort of working out our problems, but not really to the point, because my dad has been such a problem in our family for so long, in terms of like everyone in my immediate family has a problem with my dad, but my dad doesn't think he has a problem, and my dad is the person who doesn't want to like get help or anything. Like, my dad has probably a lot of unresolved trauma that like he refuses to acknowledge, and a therapist would certainly be able to help with that, but my dad has no want or desire to go to therapy, so that's cool. And I think that's a big problem, because I've gone to therapy, my brother's gone to therapy, my mom is considering going to therapy, and it's like, do you see the common denominator here? But
Do you want to talk about the time where, I guess I think it was you were going to therapy?
I think it was my brother.
Oh, okay.
It was my brother who was going to therapy, and the therapist wanted to talk to like my dad, and I think maybe I don't 100% remember if he went in and then like left, or if he flat out just was like, no, hell no. My mom would probably remember better because she was right there. But yeah, but either way, he like just said no, and it was like, we're not doing this, pretty much. And like that kind of stopped therapy for a while. And if that doesn't speak volumes, and it's hard because like I want to have a good relationship with my dad, or at least a better one. And I feel like it's impossible when my dad refuses to really know me at all, or see me for who I am at all, or respects me as a person. Like, I just, like, it's hard.
Something you told me once, I think, puts it pretty well. You said that he doesn't leave space for people.
Oh, he doesn't. No, not at all.
And
not in the least bit.
Yeah, that's where having disagreements and arguments become really problematic.
Yeah.
When, like, because like it's fine to disagree on things, but when you don't leave space for the other person, and it's all like one-sided.
My dad tries to bulldoze people.
Right.
It's all his way or the highway, which has basically been the majority of my life.
Right. Yeah, my mom. I definitely had to make my own space.
Yeah.
I fought for my own space with my
and
mom.
That's something that's interesting. We did a bit of a different thing, where you definitely fought to make a space for yourself, to the potential detriment, right? Where I kind of just like appeased my dad, like or like was very like unproblematic for the most part, until now, really, until the last few years, because it got to a point where I'm like, I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. Well, I guess really the rest of his life, because I will probably outlive him, more than likely. But that like I wanted to tear down what we had to potentially create something better, and it's kind of seeming now that like the facade that we had in place that was our relationship, or I guess that is our relationship, like my dad is perfectly content with and I'm not. And I'm just kind of being told like on all sides that, oh, this is as good as it's going to get. And I don't really find that acceptable. And like I'm kind of left with what the hell do I do now? Like I didn't even see my dad today at all, like on Father's Day. And I try to make a point of seeing my parents on like Mother's Day or Father's Day or whatever, but it's getting to the point where like literally the last time I saw my parents, I was like in a bad mental place for the next week because I went between feeling shitty about what happened, but also feeling indignant that like we even had to go through the shit that we did.
Right.
It's just shitty. That's kind of what it's come to, and I don't like that, but I also don't know how to fix it. And I don't know how to reach out in a way that makes it make sense.
Yeah. Even if I hadn't experienced some of these moments firsthand for myself as well, I still would probably be at a loss of what, I would tell you to do with the situation. So I can only imagine how lost you can be feeling.
Oh yeah.
With like what to do, like how to move forward.
I really don't know how at all. At this point, I'm just kind of exhausted over the whole thing because my options aren't very good. Like either way, like unless we can come to some sort of compromise, I would love to go to family therapy, but I don't think that the most important person that I would want to be there, my dad, wouldn't go. And that makes me mad because if my child, like if, we had a child and they were sitting here being like, hey, I really think we need to do this, or like I really think that like I want a better relationship with you guys, or like I would sit down and I'd have a conversation, and it's like I just think it's shitty that and to be fair, I've never directly said that to my dad, that, oh, I want to have a better relationship with you. I don't like our relationship like as it is, but I know damn well my mom is telling my dad this shit. Like this isn't like, this is fucking a game of telephone my mom fucking plays. Like, yeah. And it's been like that my entire life. I know like that she's telling my dad this
Your
stuff.
Your mom's the middle woman.
Yeah, my mom is definitely the middle woman, and that's both bad and a good thing and a bad thing, because on sometimes it would mediate between my dad being angry at me or my brother, and then my having it come off not so bad, like to me and him, me and my brother. But other times it's a bad thing where it's like I want to be more direct. It's like, I guess as an adult, I'm just really frustrated that like we're still doing this. Like we're still playing this game of telephone, that if my dad has a problem with me, like, or if I have a problem with him, like why can't I just voice that?
Yeah.
Like why can't I just voice that to him, and why can't he just voice that to me? Like it's very frustrating that it's at this point and I just don't even know what to do anymore, because I'm so overwhelmed and frustrated and like mentally exhausted over this whole thing, and it sucks because it makes me it makes me have a bad relationship with the rest of my family, because I'm just vibing it out, like being like stewing
yeah
in my frustration.
Yeah. I don't mean to keep interjecting with comparisons to my family, but at one point my dad was also the telephone middle person between my mom and I, and in his case it kind of sucked for him because he was at many times unable to appease both or either party.
Yeah.
I'm sure that just left him distraught.
Yeah.
He would. I remember times where he would be visibly lost in what to do, and
I'm sure my mom feels that way too.
right, and many times he just again didn't know what to do, and all he could do was just ask that we like forgive each other, and I'm just like,
that's not enough.
Right. That's
also impossible if you can't.
It's like putting in no work.
Yeah, it's putting in no work. It's also putting a Band-Aid over it.
Right, only to be
brought up again.
That Band-Aid will fall off at one point or another.
And how many times has that happened with you and your mom?
Oh, so many.
And it's like, you shouldn't feel bad about interjecting either. It's like, a lot of us, our relationship is like...
We bonded through...
we bonded...
similar experiences with our parents.
Exactly. Strangely similar. Yeah.
Despite our different, like...
cultural backgrounds, like with your parents.
Right. The cultural factors, I should say. Like,
the cultural... Yeah.
Culturally, you and I are the same almost.
But
almost.
The cultural backgrounds of our parents are entirely different.
Very different, yeah.
Yeah. Despite the fact that they are very similar personality types.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a mixed bag with my dad. Like, it's hard because it's like I appreciate like all the things that my dad has done for me, but at the end of the day, what I really value, like in a relationship, really any relationship, but particularly, friendship or like partnership or parental ones, it's the time that you put in. Like my love language is quite literally quality time. And like, I don't remember the last fucking time me and my dad just like hung out. Like, I don't know if we've ever really done that. Me and my dad are so awkward around each other.
Yeah.
Like, it's not...
I guess in a way he also might walk on eggshells around you.
Probably, yeah. I would imagine that...
Or feels that way, at least.
Maybe he feels that way as well. And it's perfectly reasonable because maybe he thinks that, I'm just this, like, crazy, like, liberal, like...
You snowflake.
Queer, snowflake, like, all this, like... millennial, whatever,
Y'all need to toughen up.
Yeah, like just a bunch of like propaganda.
Y'all getting soft.
Yeah. And it's like, to an extent, maybe I embody some of that, but I'm also like a real life human, like not like a generational fucking poster, for God's sake.
Right.
Like I'm a living, breathing person.
It's so generalizing.
Yeah, and that's what I hate the most, that my dad just kind of generalizes like our generation or like us or me, and I'm like, you could actually like ask me an opinion, like personally, like how do I feel,
Yeah.
But when he does, it doesn't usually go very well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think, well, that's like just a bigger problem with humanity in general. Like groups of people, any groups of people, whether it's divided by race, religion, gender, it just gets so generalized, I guess. Stereotyped.
Yeah.
And sometimes true, sometimes they're not.
I feel like that othering is also very detrimental for building of bridges. Like, you constantly are seeing the differences between you instead of seeing the similarities.
Right.
And I think that's the problem with me and my dad, is that there are a lot of differences and it's hard to see the similarities.
Yeah.
And I think I'm willing to put aside like the things we disagree on, and my dad is less willing to do so. I don't really know. I don't really know where he's coming from when it comes to that.
Right, because again, it comes back to oftentimes he just doesn't hold space.
Yeah, he just blows down whatever's in his path, kind of thing.
Do you want to just briefly explain like what that means? I know we've been throwing around that term, holding space, for others, but...
Oh, well, it's... it's a little bit harder concept to explain, actually.
I feel like, or I'll
Now
take a
that
stab at it.
Yeah.
When I give my opinion on anything, especially if I sense that like someone in the room that I'm in who will hear this may disagree with me, I try to make it known that this is, again, my own personal opinion, and that it's okay if they disagree.
Yeah.
Or like I don't give my opinion in a way that is, I guess, marginalizing other people.
Or at least making them feel like they don't have a say.
Yeah, or like if you don't agree with me,
You're wrong.
I hate you. Or,
yeah, I hate you. Yeah,
that's a better way to put it. You're wrong.
Yeah, or even so, I hate you. I hate you.
I
Depending
hate you
on
that was a little strong.
Yeah, but even so, like I hate you could be depending on the topic, maybe applicable.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a decent way of explaining it. It's like, you're not talking over people. You're not. It's generally not a very aggressive kind of line of either questioning or like discussion. You're giving the other person equal respect and time and
Exactly.
their opinions and
Yeah, because some people verbalize their opinions in a way that sounds like fact.
Yeah.
Like I'll give an example. I'll take something that's not politicized. Let's see. This is my actual opinion, but I'm gonna state it like like some
facts.
people do who are state their opinions like facts. Bone-in wings are trash, and boneless wings are the only way to go. See how that's not leaving space for others?
Yeah.
That like
Exactly.
it's
like end all be all.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like in a normal situation, if someone asked me boned or boneless wings, I would say I prefer boneless wings, and then they're like, oh well, I prefer bone-in. I'd be like, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's fine. Yeah, and I think in some situations, like with like our friends, we'll say shit like that all the time. But that's like we've already established a rapport where not only is that okay, but we know the other side is not being super serious about it.
Right. It's if we do speak in that way, it's sort of like mocking people who legitimately speak that way.
Exactly.
So it's in a joking way.
Yeah.
Not super serious.
Again, a time and a place.
Right. Time and a place. And that's what I'm always trying to observe and learn.
I feel like you're very good at that.
Finding that balance for a time and a place. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But you do definitely see times where like I have not yet collected enough information and am still in the observation mode.
Yeah.
And I am very quiet or very
yeah, I've definitely seen that.
Stoic?
Yeah.
Stiff?
Yeah, stiff. Stiff is a great word to use, I think, because
I'm unsure.
Yes. You're like you don't know how to proceed, so you don't proceed.
That's a great way to put it. That's me. If I am unsure,
that's how I feel. I with you sometimes.
Just don't proceed.
Like I definitely see that when we're in like different situations than we normally would be in, like because generally like when you're comfortable, you're very you definitely
open to be me.
Yeah, you're very open and you can very easily have a rapport with people you're comfortable with. But when like you're not comfortable, you're like, oh my god, what do I do?
This is where the people pleaser perfectionist in me comes out.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I am trying to learn and trying to observe who you want me to be.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thing to talk about as well. Like maybe not in this episode, but another. Like just the things we've learned about each other like in our relationship. Because that's definitely one of them. Like I have a handful for you, but
oh shit.
But none of them are bad, but that's one of them right there. That, like how you kind of see and observe the world, like which is like different from like me. Like I do the same things you do, but in a very different way. Like you do it in a very like I don't want to say like super noticeable way, but like I notice it for sure. I don't know if that's just because I'm me and like you're you, and like I obviously am noticing what you're doing.
I think,
but like even like
yeah, that's
my
a big
parents
part of it.
have noticed this and said that kind of same thing. So
Well, okay.
I don't know.
In the case of your parents, though, it's
just awkward.
It's more eggshell walking.
Yeah,
because
that's
for the longest
true.
time they didn't know we were dating, so like I had to, be very careful with my words, and I had to act in a way that I still was, wanted to impress them and get them to like me, and that's just normally me anyway. But like especially with you being my girlfriend, obviously I want that even more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I also can't let them know that you're my girlfriend, at least not at this time.
At the time, yeah.
I just need to be
now it's fine,
just a likable person, just in general, for no reason. Well,
for no reason.
For good reason.
For good reason, yeah.
I said not for no reason.
Yeah. But I think that would be a cool episode.
Yeah. But yeah, there is just a lot we could talk about with parental issues, daddy issues, and whatnot.
Yeah, a little bit too much.
That we'll probably revisit this in the future.
Yeah, there's not enough time and space in this podcast to really talk about, at least particularly my relationship.
Yeah, because you have the harder relationship with your father.
Yeah, and similarly, like the relationship when we do like the mom episode kind of thing. Like my relationship with my mom is much more similar to how your relationship is with your dad.
Right.
So it's not as contentious.
Right.
So it would be easier to explain, more lighthearted. There's a lot. I have a mixed bag with my dad.
Yeah. We'll probably revisit this maybe next year on Father's Day.
That'd be interesting.
Maybe sometime between, who knows? But I did like your other idea for a podcast episode.
Yeah,
what
we
we've
should
learned
do that.
about each other. Maybe next entry.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. Oh, and those who have expressed interest in the Twilight entry, don't you worry. It's coming too.
I was just about to say, you better not let them down.
No, I would never. I would never dream of it.
There are groupies.
Huh?
There are groupies. That's what.
They are our groupies.
Yes.
I thought you said there are groupies, like, as in saying a fact that like there.
Oh.
Like
yeah.
THERE. There are groupies. I was like, I'm sure that there are groupies out there, but like, what does that have to do with anything?
They are our groupies.
They are our groupies. Ah.
Yeah.
Not sure how that makes them feel, but.
Oh no, that's fine because they told me that.
Oh really? Yeah. Well, you know who you are. Thank you for being our groupies.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you in the Twilight episode.
Yeah.
Well, you learn something new every day. Hello to the Juandering groupies. Very much happy to have you here. Just a funny side note, I use a software that transcribes and lets me edit the podcast like a Word document called Descript. And while it sometimes is scary accurate, I'm talking it transcribed my whispers perfectly. It transcribed my last sentence as, "See you in the toilet episode." Yep, that is about right. I felt like there was so much more I could have said and wanted to say about my dad in particular. I guess some things I want to make clear is that, 1, I have a very positive view of my father. With the toxic negativity that I grew up with from my mom, I always was glad I had a dad who was so patient and didn't take things too seriously. But then, in contrast, hearing Lex's perspective with her dad, if you never take anything seriously and always try to make a joke out of everything, that can lead to some serious problems. Another thing I want to make clear is that despite all my frustrations with our differing levels of communication and connection, I view my dad almost the same as I view our family dog, Julius. He really gets excited when he sees me. He borderline gains strength when I'm around, not even joking a bit. And I know he misses me, 'cause otherwise I wouldn't be hearing from him at all hours of the day, even if I haven't responded to his last 20 text messages. Seriously, if my dog could text, I wonder who would text me more, him or my dad. But yeah, when I look at it that way, there's just a wholesome innocence to it. I'm going to end this in a bit of a non-traditional way. A few months ago, my sister sent me a TikTok that I think about every now and then. If you're listening on YouTube, I'll play it in a moment, but anywhere else, I'll give context. All it is a looped animation of a mouse eating. There's light piano music and chewing sounds, and there's text on the screen that says, POV, your dad eating alone after everyone else already finished and left the table. And the more I watched it, just the more it made me sad and made me reflect on my dad. Because I noticed he loves sharing a meal with me, and even Lex. Really, anyone other than my mom. Like, whenever I come over, the first thing he wants to do is order food or eat something he had just brought home. And the thought of him most of his days eating alone tugs on the heartstrings a bit. So, that's why I'm always happy to sit down and have a meal with him. Love you, Dad. Kain na tayo. Sige na. Blow out!